This morning we're going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, fourth canto, chapter 29, text number 54. And I have to say, especially for those who have got a Bhagavatam in front of them, this is such an amazing verse, and it's such a long verse. Usually, if we see it's usually composed of 2 or 3 verses, the length of the Sanskrit for this verse, but it is only one verse. And what a verse it is. It's the continuation of the talks between Narada Muni, and King Prachinabhari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So text number 54. Sumana samadharmanam strinam sarana ashrame pushpamadu gandhavat shudra. Somebody's got their microphone on. I can hear, so please, if you switch it off, would be good until I get through the Sanskrit. Thank you. Gandhavat shudratamam kamya karma vipakajam kama sukam lavam jaivyo pashyadi vichinvatam maituni bhuya tad abhiniveshita manasam sandhangri gana samagitavad Attimanoharavani Jan Alpeshvatitaram Atipralobhita Karanam Agrivikayutavad Atmana Ayor Haroto Horatrantan Kala Lavavish Visheshan Aviganaya Griheshu Viharantam Prishtatha Eva Paroksham Anupravrito Lubdhaka Kritantonyat Kitonta Sarenayam Iha Paravidyatitam Imam Atmanam Ahorajanbina Ridayam Drashtum Arhasiti. His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu, a great scholar, he very beautifully explains that the Bhagavatam changes its meters in different ways, and there's actually significance. It's not just changed for out of a random idea, but I can't give you the explanation of why this meter is and the way it's composed, but it has it's very significant. In Bhagavatam, everything that it does is very significant. So there's a change, there's a move in some way. Either it's a poetic move, or it's a very a dramatic move, or it's a very deep understanding, like that. So the Bhagavatam's always changing in its way of presentation. So much to be understood. So we will go to the translation, and then Srila Prabhupada's purport. Om Aganaatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Grave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master is forcing me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada's translation and purport. My dear king, woman who is very attractive in the beginning, but in the end very disturbing, is exactly like the flower, which is attractive in the beginning and detestable at the end. With woman, the living entity is entangled with lusty desires, and he enjoys sex just as one enjoys the aroma of a flower. He thus enjoys a life of sense gratification, from his tongue to his genitals, and in this way the living entity considers himself very happy in family life, united with his wife. He always remains absorbed in such thoughts. He feels great pleasure in hearing the talks of his wife and children, which are like the sweet humming of bumblebees that collect honey from flower to flower. He forgets that before him is time, which is taking away his lifespan with the passing of day and night. He does not see the gradual diminishing of his life, nor does he care about the superintendent of death who is trying to kill him from behind. Just try to understand this. You are in a precarious position and are threatened from all sides. So it's a nice light subject matter this morning to be discussed, Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Materialistic life means, and I'll have to say, when I read this verse, first time I read the verse, and I thought, okay, so Srila Prabhupada will balance this out a little bit and explain things, but often it's not the case that immediately we'll jump to give final conclusive understanding of a specific verse. It may be that the whole subject matter is discussed over many verses, and then ultimately one is able to come to a conclusion of how to absorb the knowledge that is being presented. So I read Srila Prabhupada's purport and I thought, wow, Srila Prabhupada really continues the mood of the verse itself. So hold on to your seatbelts. Purport. Materialistic life means forgetting one's constitutional position as the eternal servant of Krishna. And this forgetfulness is especially enhanced in the Grihastha ashram. In the Grihastha ashram, a young man accepts a young wife who is very beautiful in the beginning, but in due course of time, after giving birth to many children and becoming older and older, she demands many things from the husband to maintain the entire family. And there's so much being said in each sentence. We don't stay young all the time. So it's not saying that when the woman becomes older, and becoming older and older, she demands, there's a word comes to mind, crotchety. You get a crotchety old woman, you get a crotchety old man. It's a very interesting word. I haven't checked out the detailed meaning, ontological meanings and stuff. So becoming older and older, she demands many things from the husband to maintain the entire family. And again, we'll make the comment that these descriptions also are written by Srila Prabhupada, and now we find ourselves 50 years up the track. We're hearing about the Vedic culture, which is tens of thousands of years, going back to time immemorial. And these great civilization was there to help us, to guide us, to facilitate the living entity in his desire for sense gratification in the material world. But it changes constantly as we move forward in time. So how to apply these things is a great subject matter. So at such, continuing Srila Prabhupada's purport, at such a time the wife becomes detestable to the very man who accepted her in her young days. One becomes attached to the Grihastha ashram for two reasons only. The wife cooks palatable dishes for the satisfaction of her husband's tongue, and she gives him sexual pleasure at night. A person attached to the Grihastha ashram is always thinking of these two things: palatable food and sex enjoyment. Now, again, I'm going to make these points as we go through. It's very interesting how Prabhupada has used the word Grihastha ashram, because usually he differentiates between, differentiates between Grihamedi ashram and Grihasta ashram. So Grihasta ashram is a place for spiritual development, like all the ashrams. Prabhupada spoke very emphatically. There's the sannyas ashram, there's the vanaprastha ashram, there's the brahmachari ashram, and there's the grihastha ashram. All are places where there is shelter, if it's actually an ashram. But picking up the mood of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada is picking up Narada Muni's mood, which is an emphatic mood of preaching to somehow or other get Prachinabhari to where he has to go, to actually realize that he is not fulfilling the ultimate goal of his life. So Narada Muni is known for being able to speak in a very penetrating way. We hear about Daksha, Prajapati Daksha, cursed Narad because he'd taken his sons away. Because of his very strong preaching, they became transformed, and they thought, yes, what is the use of performing austerities so that we can go and take up grihastha life? Better we take up renunciation directly. This will be the best. And that's also a big subject matter. So, going back to Srila Prabhupada's mood in conveying the Bhagavatam to us, following in the parampara from Narada Muni. The talks of the wife, which are enjoyed as a family recreation, and the talks of the children both attract the living entity. He thus forgets that he has to die someday and has to prepare for the next life if he wants to be put into a congenial body. The deer in the flower garden is an allegory used by the great sage Narad to point out to the king that the king himself is similarly entrapped by such surroundings. Actually, everyone is surrounded by such a family life which misleads one. The living entity thus forgets that he has to return home back to Godhead. He simply becomes entangled in family life. Prahlad Maharaj has therefore hinted, Hit vat ma patam griham andakupam vanogato yad darim asrayeta. Family life is considered a blind well, andakupam, into which a person falls and dies without help. So this example we have to cease. Sometimes there's a well is covered by grass over many years, and someone may be unfortunate to fall into that well. And when one falls into that well, there's no way out, and there's no one around to hear the cries of someone who's fallen into a well. So in a similar way, this analogy is given to help us understand the position that generally one enters into the blind well of household life and thinks this is the all in all, and is left there. And in due course of time, he or she has to die. And if all one thought the purpose of life was to eat, sleep, mate, and defend, then we have missed the great opportunity. So Prahlad Maharaj recommends that while one's senses are there and one is strong enough, so this is continuing Srila Prabhupada's purport, he should abandon the Grihastha ashram and take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, going to the forest of Vrindavan. Wow, come on, man. It's time for us to pack up and write a little note and say we're off to Vrindavan and might see you back in the spiritual world. Maybe or maybe not. Let's continue. According to Vedic civilization, one has to give up family life at a certain age. Prabhupada in brackets has got the age of 50. We'll stop, close brackets. Take vanaprastha and eventually remain alone as a sannyasi. That is the prescribed method of Vedic civilization known as Varnashram Dharma. When one takes sannyas after enjoying family life, he pleases the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Very important point we'll come back to. The idea is to please the Supreme Lord in all of one's activities, and certainly This is very pleasing to the Supreme Lord, where one takes full shelter of the Supreme Lord and shows to the Lord that he is no longer attracted to these things. What is the point of a prolonged duration of life and experience by so many years in this world, the Bhagavatam says? Better a moment's full consciousness. Why? Because that full consciousness gives one a start in attaining the supreme goal of life, which is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Continuing, Srila Prabhupada's purport. One has to understand one's position in family or worldly life. Big statement. Say it again, if I may. One has to understand one's position in family or worldly life. That is called intelligence. One should not remain always trapped in family life to satisfy his tongue and genitals in association with a wife. In such a way, one simply spoils his life. Now, it's also worth mentioning the Bhagavatam and many of the scriptures are written mostly for in a context of male reading and understanding. It's just that is a traditional way of the Vedic culture. The man would actually be the guide for the wife, and therefore it's written in this way. And if one is fortunate enough to understand what is being presented, then such a man becomes a first-class man and can lead his wife and his children towards the ultimate goal of life. So that is the idea. In such a way, I suppose, it is continuing on. In such a way, one simply spoils his life if he remains trapped in association with a wife, and similarly for the wife associated with a materialistic man who is only interested in eating palatable food and enjoying sex life. Poor lady, she's stuck in the blind well of household life too. If that's the case, if she has such a husband, yeah. In such a way, one simply spoils his life. According to Vedic civilization, it is imperative to give up the family at a certain stage by force if necessary. He was like, wow, Prabhupada's really going for it here, like Narada Muni. Unfortunately, so-called followers of Vedic life do not give up their family even at the end of life unless they are forced by death. There should be, Prabhupada ends his purport, there should be a thorough overhauling of the social system, and society should revert to the Vedic principles, that is, the four varnas, the four ashramas. Wow, what an amazing verse and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, as I've mentioned already, following in the mood of Narada Muni. So I offer my humble obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who has forced me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. So, moving through the different varnas and ashrams is very, very important. And Srila Prabhupada is saying at the end of this purport, there should be a thorough overhauling of the social system, and society should revert to the Vedic principles, that is, the four varnas and four ashramas. So all of the ashramas are very important, and Prahlad Maharaj is saying that Komanamacharya Prajna, from the very beginning of life, one should perform the activities that are required in devotional service. It's not something that has to be done at the end of life, but it should be done from the beginning. And so, excuse me, I'm just going to close a curtain. I'm just getting a little sun that's going. I'll be right there. I think that would, at least for the time being. So where were we? Prahlad Maharaj encouraging that we should begin from the very beginning of life and not wait until the end of life for understanding the purpose of life itself. Um, so I've made a few notes and I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Hopefully, we'll be able to understand the subject matter. We were reading, my wife and I were reading the Prabhupada calendar as we do on a daily basis. And a few days ago, relating to this subject matter, there's a letter to Rupanuga Prabhu. And this was in 1968. And I'll read it to you. It's just a short little quote. A grihasta or householder like you are also Tridandi, because you have sacrificed everything, your life, your home, and your child. So you are a Tridandi sannyasi. In fact, continue this attitude seriously and sincerely. So you will also, sorry, so you will be also as good as a sannyasi, even though you are in the dress of a grihasta. And yeah, and just yesterday we were listening also to a Prabhupada Memories video, and the similar subject was discussed just to show how important taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master who is expert in how to apply the tenets of spiritual teaching is so important. In fact, not just important, but imperative. It has to be done. Otherwise, one will not be able to understand how to proceed in spiritual life. So this little clip of a Prabhupada memory was, where was that? Uttama Sloka, who was the temple president of Toronto Temple in Canada. So he told this memory that Srila Prabhupada they'd been looking for a temple, a proper building for a temple to move to a proper temple. So they'd found this building and they were showing Srila Prabhupada, showing the drawings of the building, etc. And Srila Prabhupada was inquiring all about it. And Prabhupada said eventually, he said, how much is that building? And he said that it's 500,000. That's $500,000. So that's a lot of money in those days, especially we weren't very wealthy at all. And so Prabhupada had been asking all about it and showing great interest. And then Uttama Sloka said, when he told him the price, Prabhupada paused for a little while. He said, we are not interested in too much anxiety, purchasing so much anxiety. We are simply interested in chanting Hare Krishna and happily executing devotional life. So the devotees thought, oh, wow, that's so unfortunate, so, like that. And then Srila Prabhupada, this devotee, Uttama Sloka, told the story so nicely because he was there. He was speaking to Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, too much anxiety. So the devotees thought, yeah, well, that must be the most Krishna conscious thing. And Prabhupada was saying that. So then Prabhupada said, and where was the temple room you were going to? So he inquired again more about it. And then it went back and forward like this for a while, and the devotees were trying to understand just where's Prabhupada going with this. And then Uttama Sloka said, Prabhupada banged his fist down. He said, anxiety, we must have anxiety. Otherwise, we will simply be sleeping and eating. And what is the use of this? We must have anxiety. And so the devotees were saying, 1 minute Prabhupada said one thing, another time he said something. So the reason I'm telling this story is to see that in some circumstances an instruction is given and it can be a counter and a contrary instruction, but it doesn't mean that there's any problem. The all these contradictions, apparent contradictions, are resolved in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotees. Just like Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, he also said like that I want my temples to be poor. I don't want them to be rich and opulent. Otherwise, we will simply become attached to eating and sleeping and so on and so forth. So this is the bit of a dilemma, you could say, how to understand. When we were doing our Grihasta seminars over the years, especially in India at this time, we would present different ways of trying to appreciate this subject matter. Oh, now remembering, Prabhupada also said, all of my uh, all of my ladies, disciples, they must be married, and all the men should remain brahmachari. Hello? Um, how is that going to be possible? And Srila Prabhupada actually he he was he sent out a letter to introduce the idea that okay, so how to resolve that is that we should have more than one wife, and this was also part of the Vedic system that one if one could maintain properly more than one wife, then that was very good because there's always more female population than male, and so if one man can marry more ladies, then all the ladies can be married like that. Um, but it was very quickly taken. There was some discussion. Prabhupada discussed with some of his senior devotees, and Srila Prabhupada saw that this would not be acceptable. Although it's acceptable to have many affairs with all kinds of people in this crazy modern world, but to have more than one wife is seen as, oh, that's very uncivilized. It's more civilized if you just go out and have loose relationships here, there, and everywhere. Um, so very confusing. Yeah, discussing this, we have to see how the Acharya uh, and the spiritual master is able to represent Krishna in such a way. I think one of the verses previous to this was also explaining that the very beautiful explanation that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fully present in uh, in the being of the spiritual master. He is actually a bona fide spiritual master. And to become a bona fide spiritual master, um, again, it's so many aspects to every word I say at the moment. I'm thinking there's so many aspects. Bona fide spiritual master. In London, one man asked Srila Prabhupada, "Why did you start your mission so late in life?" So it was a good question. And Srila Prabhupada's answer was that I had to be qualified. So Srila Prabhupada was thinking like that. He didn't just take a bit of a break in Vrindavan, but he was preparing himself for this mission to become fully qualified to perform the task that he had to perform, which was to present Krishna to the world. So he's uh, uh, in that way the servitor personality of God, God appearing in the form of the spiritual master to give us this connection. Um, so the subject matter, going into the subject matter, is that one is very attracted in the beginning, and that is again, you spin it round. Obviously, for a woman, she is attracted to a male. He's young, he's handsome, he's strong, he has a great capacity to fulfill the desires of the woman, and she thinks yes, and then it's a big disappointment. We used to do that in the classes. I'll just hold my arm up so you can see, so the man, he's got his muscles here, and you hear that. My wife said at the school one child, she was sort of a little bit, not shocked, but a little bit. And he's only a little kid, and he's going, "I've got a six pack. Look," and this focus on the body is very, very strong. So anyway, so the young men are wanting to grow all their muscles to look as though they can protect all the women, but it's a farce. They are simply interested in their own sense gratification. The poor woman is bewildered by that and thinks, "Oh, you protect me." Uh, yes, and the muscles are here. And there was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was known as I think he was the Terminator, going back a few years, but I'm sure most of you will know about that. And he was Mr. Muscle, Mr. Universe, or whatever they say universe, but it was just the Earth planet. So he was the muscle man. But then pictures of him 20, 30 years later, the muscles were here, but then the muscles they drop, and they drop down here, and the face drops. Yeah. And the breast drop of a woman, like string beans. It's explained in the Krishna book, uh, uh, like that. So the whole thing is a bit of a bit of a farce. So um, that which is very attractive in the beginning, eh, in this family life. So so many ways to take this. Uh, the Should we take it to inspire the grihastas who are listening just now, especially especially the men and the women who are listening, or do we take it as a preaching opportunity, like it's it's presented here for Prachinabhari to hear from Narad and for him to get it, to actually understand that his situation is very precarious and that he's simply wasting the opportunity of taking to devotional service. One of the subject matters that dealt with in this chapter is that there are many processes, um, karma kanda, jnana kanda, upasana kanda, all the processes. One may become expert like King Prachinabhari in performing sacrifices and so on. But the Bhagavatam says that the Atapumya Dvijashreshtas Varnashrama Vibhagasa, that it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can attain by discharging one's duties according to the caste divisions and orders of life is to please Samsiddhi Hari Toshanam. Another verse. Uh, uh, what is that verse? There's so many verses that point us to this Samsiddhi Hari Toshanam, is to please the personality of God. In the purport here, it says that uh, when one takes sannyas after enjoying family life, he pleases the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So the idea of all activities is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that will be the best thing. So Narad is trying to give, pardon me, that opportunity to King Prachinabhari, and he's used all kinds of ways. I suppose that's a message for us as devotees, following in the footsteps, is to use allegorical presentations, to make gentle presentations, to make forceful presentations, to do whatever it takes in whatever circumstance one finds oneself in, or is trying to approach others and encourage them in their spiritual life to somehow find the key to open the door. um, so let me see. We've got living in this. Yeah. So, quoting, I'm trying to think now, quoting Lord Rishabhadev, he's explaining to his sons, Nayam deho deha bhajamri loke, kastan kaman ahutam vidbujamye, tapodevyam putraka yena sattvam sudhyedyas mad brahma sokyam tvanantam. My dear boys, of those living entities who have attained material bodies, those who have been awarded this human form of life should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available to the hogs and the dogs that eat stool. Rather, one should engage in penance and austerities to attain the divine position of devotional service. One experiences transcendental happiness, which is uh, transcendent to this material pleasures, but one experiences Brahma Sokyam, spiritual happiness. So, somewhere, either it's at the the beginning of life, one has to take that, and that is the important thing. Education. And Srila Prabhupada speaks throughout the Bhagavatam about the education. The education has to begin from the very beginning. And there's two paths. The path of sense gratification. And when one thinks that to be the goal of life, he becomes mad, the Bhagavatam says, after sense gratification. When a person considers sense gratification to be the goal of life, then he becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activities. He doesn't realize that the body he has now and the difficulties he's facing have been created by his past activities. And in this way, he'll continue again and again in materialistic life. Pardon me. Excuse me. So I'm choking in the throat, and obviously I have to go to the forest because it says at the age of 50, and I'm 73 now, so I've missed the boat. But then Narad would say the boat's still sitting there, you haven't missed it. And uh, it appears that the boat is sannyas, but Lord Chaitanya says, I am not a sannyasi, I am not a vanaprastha, I am not a grihastha or a brahmachari. I'm not a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. I'm Gopi Partu, Padakamaluyo Dasa Dasa Anudas. I'm eternally the servant of the servant of the servant of the eternally self-manifesting ocean of nectar of the highest bliss, the master of the gopis, Sri Krishna. So that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement. Oh, that's a little confusing again, huh? And who did Lord Chaitanya associate with? Did he only associate with sannyasis? Oh, yeah. Huh? Swarup Damodar, uh, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Jiva Goswami, the six Goswamis of Vrindavan, and so many renunciates would come to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his pastimes in early life and then later in Jagannath Puri. But he didn't only associate with sannyasis, he associated with Advaita Acharya. Oh, his wife was Sita Thakurani. He was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, Mahavishnu appearing in that way. Srivas Pandit was the head of all the devotees to take them to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They would go every year to see the Lord in Jagannath Puri. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became so dear to the Lord in his interactions as a devotee. Srila Ramananda Rai, they were not renunciates, but they were completely sold out to Krishna, and therefore they became intimate associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He would never associate with a Vishai, a sense enjoyer. So, Prabhupada's making the point there should be a thorough overhauling of the social system. So going back to what I was saying, there's two generations. I'm just remembering that two directions. One is sense gratification, that's the goal of life. And if you take that up from the very beginning of life, which has happened, 5 years old, go to school, get an education. Why do you want an education? So as you can fit into the workplace. That is a demoniac agenda that our children should be placed in school and learn how to get an education to fit into the system of economic development and sense gratification, thinking that this is the goal of life. So that is an absolute tragedy that is destroying any vestiges, or last vestiges of human civilization. It is increasing day by day. And the other is to understand from the very beginning, from the very beginning of life, that this life is not meant to work hard simply like animals to get sense gratification, which is available to the hogs and the dogs. But rather we have to be trained from the very beginning that yes, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to mate, you have to defend. These things are there for everyone, apart from the occasion Aistika brahmachari is there. That is the exception. But the normal, the general, and it's a gradual process. We hear this also through the pages of the Bhagavatam. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayanakata tachjoshanat asu apavargavatmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishiti. Anukramishiti means gradually. It's a gradual process. For 99.9%, it's a gradual process. Even for Narada, it was a gradual process. So it's a gradual process. We have to go from the darkness to the light. And that process is a gradual process. Ado Shraddha, you begin. Huh? Thinking of so many things. Ado Shraddha, you begin there with faith. Then you associate and take the association. Ado Shraddha. Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivriti, and that Tato Bhajeta. it describes how the gradual process goes to Nishta, then Bhava, then Prema. Ultimately, we come to that platform if we continue on this path. So many ways we could go with that, but two directions. One is material absorption, and the results of that are facing us every day. And the other is spiritual development, where, as Prabhupada said many times, if you have $1 million, you also have 100,000, you have 10,000, 1,000, like that. You have all the money within a million. I used to be able to, a million seemed like a lot, but yeah, now it's a billion. So if you've got $1 billion, all your money problems are solved, so, sort of. Huh? So when we have spiritual life, when we have Krishna, then all our problems are solved. We shouldn't think that there will be no sense gratification. Sense gratification is very small in comparison because sense gratification is basically under the umbrella of lust. So lust for our own personal gratification. So when we have something so much more valuable than lust, which is love, if we can develop love, then that sense gratification is insignificant. It comes of its own accord. You know, I remember explaining to one of my friends, I may have told you this before, but I had a very close friend that I came from Scotland with to and whenever it was, 1972, I think it was. So he wanted to travel the world. So we traveled from Scotland to Australia. We emigrated there to play football and stuff that we used to do. So we did everything together, but he and and I decided to give up all the. I won't go into all the details, but everything we did. The house next door to each other. We got married pretty much around the same time. We joined the fire brigade together. We played in the same soccer team together. Did everything. I joined Hare Krishna, and he didn't. And so the he had this idea when I joined. It was like, oh wow, you're giving up everything. But it was interesting. His desire was always to travel. He wanted to travel. Yeah. And so I gave up all these things and just became a devotee. Huh? But the reality turned around, 20, 30, 40 years later, that I've traveled all over the world. We've gone to Russia, we've gone to America, we've gone to Europe, we've gone to Australia, we've gone pretty much, not everywhere, but lots of places. Whereas my friend didn't travel so many things. So the point I'm making is that by destiny and by Krishna's arrangement, things will come to us. So there'll always be enough food. Why he feeds the elephants in the jungle? Why won't he feed his devotees? Krishna's, yeah. So, um, so two directions. One is sense gratification. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Yeah. In any civilization, there is God consciousness. If it's actually a human civilization, and you see how it rose around this concept of higher consciousness. And whenever God is taken out of the equation, it degenerates and collapses in so many ways. So the path of Krishna consciousness and Narad is making the point to King Prachinabhari. So King Prachinabhari is always dangerous. When we engage in gross sinful activities, it's very dangerous. To lose the human form of life, it's very dangerous. But if we elevate our consciousness, it still remains dangerous until we get shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because even as King Prachinabhari, he's performing yagyas and he's thinking he's doing great. Look at me, I'm doing all this wonderful things. But actually, Narad, who's on a higher platform, is able to point out to him, you don't realize how dangerous this is. You will be forced to take birth again, and those creatures that you've killed will also, that karmic reaction will be there. So it's only by getting the association Brahmanda Brahma Kona Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasad Bhakti Lata Bija. Only by the association of a pure devotee of the Lord can we be directed to the topmost Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam, the spotless Purana, which distinguishes illusion or truth from illusion for the benefit of everyone. Dharma projita kaitavatra. It rejects all cheating religion or materially motivated religion and establishes pure Krishna consciousness, which alone can take one to the supreme abode. Nate vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu durasyaye bahiratamani andaya tander upariyamas tepeshitanta urudam nibata. We people generally don't know that this is the goal of life, and so yeah, we have a great responsibility to to assimilate this knowledge and to give it to others. So I think I'm going to finish in a few minutes. I think where are we going with time? Yeah, so we'll finish in a couple of minutes. I'll just make sure if there was anything else that I had that maybe should. Yeah, we've really covered in different ways. Adjustments. Okay, so let's do that. Let's finish there. And if anyone has any,
Hare
what's the
Krishna
word?
Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. This is
Hare
Srishta
Krishna.
Chaitanya. The, Thank you so much for enlightening the text, which is very, very deep in the sense of how we understand the Grihastha ashram. And it's
Yeah.
very, very important how to undertake the spiritual life right from the beginning of our stage, or right from the beginning of our life, which is
Mm.
explained by Prahlad Maharaj. That is the time where we can take up the things very seriously, and eventually in during our lifetime we can be perfected and go back to the garden. So this is how
Yeah,
um,
let me
Narad.
comment on your reflection. Just pause there if you can. I asked Srila Prabhupada a question in 1976, and I asked him, Why do we see so many young people taking to Krishna consciousness?" I was young at that time,
Mm,
and not so many older people." And Srila Prabhupada's beginning of his answer, he said, "It is very difficult to teach old fools." He
yeah,
said old fools, but young people you can teach because that is the time for learning. You're able to
mm,
assimilate stuff. So, and
yeah,
Prabhupada went on to speak for another 15, 20 minutes
mm,
on this subject.
yeah. This very good point, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you
So,
for that.
but we've got to take it up wherever we can. And how to apply this is, again, it's a conundrum. It's a real, how do I do this? Should I run, pack my bags tonight and head off and leave the family? It says in the Shastra that you should, it's glorious if a man leaves home and no one knows where he's gone. I
Mm,
don't know if that's a good idea for you to do tonight or for me to do tonight, because there's so many factors we have to take into consideration when we try to execute devotional service.
mm,
So, and what's good for one man's food is another man's poison, is what is said. Um, so we have to be very, what do we say? Very intelligent. Prabhupada says intelligence.
mm,
One has to understand one's position in family or worldly life. That is called intelligence. So we have to use, Prabhupada would say, use your God-given intelligence. God is giving the intelligence. And then we have to consult some friends, not some friend that's going to flatter us, but someone who you feel, if you just for example, if one was thinking, yeah, well, I'm hearing this,
mm,
yeah, man, I should leave home and go and like that. So, but one should not do that precocious. Just
mm,
one should consult some friends, consult one's guru, some shiksha guru, and discuss and see what is actually beneficial. What will please Krishna? What will
mm.
please Krishna? If you run
Yeah.
off and leave your wife and family, will that please Krishna? Are they supported? Do you have a grown-up son? do you have enough financial arrangement to protect? Especially, we're talking, this is again bringing this into the context of Vaishnav devotees. We are, our wives and husbands, they're not just uh, sense gratifying men just wanting
mm,
sex and food from a woman, but they're very sincere men trying to become Krishna conscious. And the women who have taken shelter in this Krishna consciousness movement are not materialistic women. They're trying in every way to learn how to be Prabhupada calls it. He said, "Oh, I'm trying to remember now." He says like that: the woman is the counterpart of the man. If the man can become
mm.
first class in the woman, she's a counterpart in spiritual life, and there's no need to give up. So yes, there's
Yes.
a need to give up over here. No need to give up like
Mm.
that. So we have to use our intelligence how to act, so to please the Lord. And we can pray to the Lord for guidance. Pray to Him. If I'm meant to do this or do that, please guide me and help me.
Yeah,
Any
so
other,
that
please? Yes.
because the in the early stage of our life, the mind is completely a blank paper, so it is no scratches. But since we get older, it is lot of questions is filled up with these pages, so it is hard to rub out all
All
those
right.
impressions. Is very
Yes.
hard. That's why Prabhupada said it is very difficult when a man is grown old to modify him to the right path, but a child can be modified into its own way because it is a blank paper. So that is how Srila Prabhupada tried to make us understand. So it is
Right.
very important to begin such a spiritual um, enlightenment right from the beginning of so that it can go straight line, not a zigzag way, and that is how it helps a person to grow his spiritual life. So here we can
Yes.
see
So
how
sorry.
yes, Prabhu.
So we have so much work to do. I love the point that you made that it's a blank page, but we've made many scratches on the page, so it's very hard to
Mm,
erase. I think
mm.
it's actually very good. Um, so sorry, you were going to continue. You were going to finish by saying something.
Yeah, so this life need to be directed, not to become a Grihamedi. So Prabhupada is trying to make us understand the Grihamedi's status and the Grihastha status. So so we need to be a Grihastha ashram person, not a Grihamedi, which is
Yes,
actually dwindle us from the spiritual path. So it is better to make ourselves prepare for the Grihastha life and stage, and so that we can elevate ourselves right from the brahmachari to the stage of sannyas in gradual way by understanding and learning the spiritual uh, studies through the
ye-
Varnashram system. So Prabhupada is trying to emphasize the importance of Varnashram so that we can correctly follow the path and to elevate ourselves in the right
and
perspective
yeah,
to
yeah.
earn.
Hold on. Sorry, I got to come in sometimes, otherwise, yeah. So a couple, we have to learn and again use our intelligence. If, for example, the wife is very encouraged by preaching, uh, by so vanaprastha is there, and we have to, as I say, use the common sense to see what is actually going on in our life. So if the woman is very inspired to live in a Krishna conscious way, then there's no necessity for leaving. Still, you may leave, it may be there,
Mm,
but
mm,
there's no necessity for leaving. But if the woman, say, she's feeling too much pressure, man is wanting to travel, preach, or whatever he may want to do, and all this stuff, the
mm,
woman may find, hey, I can't, that's not really what I want. So then Shastra explains that there's no problem. The woman then is looked after nicely by her family in the
mm.
ideal Vedic way. Um,
Yes.
and then the man will find, oh, this must be Krishna's arrangement. Mataji is happy because she wants to stay. She'll look after the grandchildren and she'll give her knowledge to all
Mm,
the family members, and that she's happy. and you're able to go and you feel happy that that's happening, then it should be done generally like that. There's always exceptions, um, but there's no stereotype. That's the point I
Yes.
suppose you're making. There's no stereotype. Yes, you have to do it this way or do it that way. But what we do have, there's a stereotype, Narada Muni saying, and Prabhupada's following in this with his purport. The stereotype idea is definitely that you have to come out of the darkness, you have to come to the light and
Mm.
learn how to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That
Yes.
is required for everyone. Then that will bring satisfaction.
Right.
So, any other reflections there or question anyone has? We've got another minute or two
Uh,
if we
Hare
need
Krishna
it.
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Hare Krishna, Avajara Dashiya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhu, just you have the one point you have told very nicely about Prabhupada is told that one should be qualified to undertake a task, particularly in preaching in Krishna consciousness.
Mm.
Otherwise, often the things even we learn from the spiritual masters, also we cannot understand what unless we have the proper what you will say qualification to understand that. So it is very necessary for one to prepare for every stage of life when we go there. Otherwise, we cannot do our things perfectly. So in this regard, I'm just asking you because you have a long experience about our movement in this year. I remember you came to my house about 23 years ago, long back in Epsom at the time. And what is your conception? Are we is the movement going in that way? The qualified people have taken over, or what is your own thought on that? I mean, the preaching I'm talking about in
I'm
particular.
sorry, what was the last thing you said, Prabhu?
Regarding preaching movement that is going on. So is it properly going on, or because you have a long experience on that, you can probably throw some
Some
light on that.
you're wanting me to reflect on how the preaching is going on.
Yeah, yeah. Because we want to know from you, Prabhu. You have the qualification in that sense.
Krishna, Krishna. I'm hoping to preach someday and do something useful for my spiritual master. Um, I'm at the stage where I'm trying to at least look after my family in a way which is pleasing to Prabhupada. But the preaching is going on in many different ways, and how to. I'm inspired because I see some. Or my source of inspiration, let me say it this way, is to find those who are preaching in a way which inspires me, and I feel great confidence that they are very pleasing in their presentation of Krishna consciousness, very pleasing to Prabhupada. That Srila Prabhupada, his mood, I'll just say it that way. His mood is being reflected. So I get great inspiration from seeing that kind of preaching. So I would just say the more we can cultivate the mood of Srila Prabhupada in everything that we do, then the effect of that preaching, we're using this word preaching, this way of living, if we can live in the way of these great personalities, especially our Srila Prabhupada, then that will be very effective. So Prabhupada is the source of all our inspiration, and and I think that's definitely the case. Prabhupada said, my books will be the guiding light for the next 10,000 years. So if we can just get our heads into these books, associate in that way, hear from each other, discuss these subject matters, and try to pray to Krishna for maturity, to know how to act in different circumstances in a Krishna conscious way. If we can pray to Krishna for that, then the preaching will go on more and more. And preaching, it's not all preaching is. Srila Prabhupada said at one stage, we don't have to open any more new temples. We have to boil the milk. This is a famous statement that he said. So have to boil. What does that mean? We should stay home and boil pots of milk and make paneer or something? No. You have to make it sweeter. So preaching is not just all about pravachan, giving lectures and stuff. Oh, wonderful! You gave a big talk and stuff. But it's about our actions and the development of our love and care for our wives, for our children, for other devotees. When devotees leave, it's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very unhappy to hear that devotee had left. And said, who's gone to see him? Who's gone to? He said, buckets of blood are spent in making someone a devotee. So sad. So we have to be reflective. Otherwise, we can preach, but if inside there's yeah, I could talk all day about this subject matter, but I think you understand. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, you have given enough light on us, and thank you for that. Because the reason I asked you, not to embarrass you, but because you were a direct disciple of Prabhupada, so you have some experience you wanted to learn from him. Thank you
No,
for that. Thank you for sharing.
thank you for your
It's a great.
very nice question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Mataji, so I think we can finish there.
I think, Prabhuji, there is no other questions. If there is no other questions, we can.
Yeah. Vanchakalpatarivyaश्च
कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च
कृपासिन्धुभ्यः
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।
अनंतकोटि विष्णुवृंद
वैष्णव
की
वृंद
जय।
की जय।
जय शिला प्रभु की जय।
जय।
शिला प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय।
सत्यमानंदे हरि हरि बोल।
हरि हरि बोल।
All glories to the Supreme Lord.
हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna Prabhus.
Krishna.